And that is Amelia, Big Big World on Liverpool Live Radio. And I'm Paul Higgs. On this Saturday afternoon, there's been another goal at the Etihad. It's gone the way of Manchester City. They now lead Fulham by 2-1 in the Premier League this afternoon. But we're going to turn our attention now to Everton in action against Newcastle at 5:30, of course. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined on the line once again by Steve Dickinson. Now, Steve is a lifelong Blue and also the co-author of the unofficial Everton timeline 2014 to 2023, the Mashiri years. And Steve, really good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us once again today.
Thanks for having me back on, Paul.
It's a pleasure. And I think it's fair to say, Steve, this is the first time that we've spoken since the news the other week that the Mashiri years may be coming to an end, of course, with the Friedkin Group reaching an agreement to buy Mashiri's 94% stake in the club. What was your reaction on hearing that news?
Very positive. I mean, we've been through some ups and downs. I was very positive when Friedkin came along earlier in the summer after the exclusivity period with 777 partners ended. And then when they announced that they were pulling out again due to complications that were believed to be involved with the money Everton had borrowed from 777, perhaps more of that in a minute or two, but then they pulled out. And that was a real downer for me. I thought, potentially great partners, the Friedkin Group. They have serious money behind them. They current owners of AS Roma. They know football and how to run a football club. It turned Roma's finances and performance around considerably since they got involved. And have also got links to some great commercial partners like Toyota and others. So, all enticing. And then when they pulled out, it was bad news. But on the 23rd of September, they came back in and the club and Friedkin jointly announced that Friedkin had agreed to acquire Farhad Mashiri's 94.1% stake in the club.
And I believe as well this deal, Steve, is said to be worth around about 400 million, which leaves Mashiri with very little return, doesn't it, on his substantial investment in the club?
Yes, I mean, it's a complicated financial deal, the terms of which have not been fully disclosed. But, one of the most significant issues is that whoever buys the club, even if they paid £1 for the club to Mashiri, would be taking on in excess of 600 million in debts that the club owes, that Everton owe people money to. And therefore, dealing with the creditors is probably the number one issue. But Mashiri will probably end up with little or nothing out of the deal itself.
And of course, we know this deal is subject to regulatory approval from the Premier League, also the Football Association and the Financial Conduct Authority as well. And we know, Steve, that Everton and their supporters, they've been here before, haven't they, with all the talk about the Friedkin Group previously and also 777 partners. But insiders say that this feels very different this time, with the deal being described by some as momentous.
I think in the past, the other exclusive arrangements that Mashiri had come to with several parties, quite often involved people who needed to borrow money to buy Everton. And when you've got a club so heavily indebted as Everton, to then bring further debt into the situation was always going to be extremely. Add to that, in the case of 777, who were on the scene as potential Everton buyers and showing up at Everton games for 9 months. Add to that their various court cases that were being brought against them around the world, and they just seem like absolutely the wrong potential owners. So I think Everton have really dodged a bullet by not getting tied down to them in particular. So it was great news, when Friedkin came along, a company with serious wealth behind it, a group with a turnover of around $11 billion a year, apparently, and Dan Friedkin, the man behind it, with personal wealth counting 5 to 6 billion range. So they've certainly got the resources should they choose to apply them to Everton.
And I've read reports, Steve, that suggest that Everton could move into the new Bramley Moore Dock Stadium almost debt-free, according to some reports. But ultimately, Everton's hope that this new deal, quite simply, just brings stability back to the club.
Yes. We've had such a turbulent period. Farhad Moshiri could be accused of many things, many failings during his time with the club since 2016. But I believe that the fundamental problem is that he refused to appoint some serious top-end professionals to the board in various roles, chairman, chief executive, director of football, and without a clear, well-thought-through footballing strategy that was then deployed by the people that whoever Farhad Moshiri gave the job to, they got on and deployed that strategy. We've just been in the mess we've been in with no clear strategy, 8 managers in as many years, the results we all know, and the money that was spent by Moshiri in the early years of his ownership because it was being, there was no clear plan, no clear strategy at all. So I think that Friedkin will adopt a very different approach, and let's hope so for the club's sake and the supporters' sake.
Well, this is it. And, you talk about 8 managers under Moshiri's reign. There is speculation that should this deal go through, then Sean Dyche will be replaced as Everton manager, and that will be one of Dan Friedkin's first jobs to maybe change the manager. Reports about Maurizio Sarri possibly being in the frame, also Jose Mourinho as well. What's your take on the future of Sean Dyche should this deal go ahead?
First of all, I'm very much on the side that the man has done a tremendous job on and off the field in extraordinarily difficult circumstances with basically no board, no backing, no financial backing. He and Kevin Thelwell have really been playing around in a quagmire. That was the mess that they inherited. So it's been very, very difficult for them. Is Sean Dyche the best manager in the world? He'd probably be the first to admit he isn't. But he's a good, solid man, and he's been the leadership behind the club ever since he came, and the chief ambassador and spokesperson for the club. I think whether it's Sean Dyche or anybody else, fundamentally it comes back to this word I'm probably overusing, but one of strategy. If you don't know where you're going, any way you go won't get you there. And so knowing where you're going as a starting point, knowing what type of football you plan to play, what kind of players you plan to play, what kind of finances are available, should you be relying on developing the academy and adopting a sort of Brighton and Hove Albion type of strategy. All of those questions need to be answered by the new owner, by a new CEO, possibly a new director of football. It depends on what their plans are for the club. And then flowing down from that comes the choice of manager. Because if you don't get the strategy right and everybody buying into it, you could appoint Mourinho and in 18 months he said, hey, this isn't working, I'm off again, and you're back to square one. And, with the new stadium, with the new owners, it's a real opportunity to set the club right for the next 5 to 10 years. So they should take their time. I'm sure they're giving it some serious thought now in this period, waiting for the deal to get approval. But they should take their time, assess the situation, come and have a look at the club, and then make their decisions.
And arguably, Steve, as well, this positivity from Evertonians in terms of the club's ownership is seemingly now being felt on the pitch as well, with Everton, of course, registering their first league win of the season at Goodison last Saturday on the back of a point earned at Leicester City the previous weekend. And we should make it clear, shouldn't we, Steve, that on the pitch, Everton are now playing some good football, although it did start slowly against Palace last weekend.
Well, it was definitely a game of two halves. The first half being dire. one of the worst displays I've seen by an Everton team in a long time. But, they went in at half-time. Apparently, from Ashley Young's Instagram after the match, Seamus Coleman came in and gave them a rousing team talk and set them straight. I'm sure Sean Dyche had a word or two as well. He then adjusted the system somewhat and took Lindstrom off and put Jack Harrison on, and that made quite a difference. And goals make such a difference to games, and getting a goal 2 minutes into the second half just changed the whole mood in the stadium. And then to get a second a few minutes later, gave us something on to. A much improved second half performance.
I think you're right, and I think actually in relation to Jack Harrison, who you mentioned there, when you look at the performance against Palace, it looked like Dyche made the right decision at the right time, didn't he, to bring on Jack Harrison at half-time, because there seemed to me to be like an almost instantaneous shift in momentum at that point.
Yeah, he made a good call. In fairness, Lindstrom, who I've got a lot of time for, but did have a dreadful first half and seemed a bit lost with the pace of the game and wasn't tracking back properly. And Dyche made the right decision. He took him off at half-time, protected him for another day, put Jack Harrison on, who instantly, pegged their player back on his wing, so they weren't able to maraud forward, and got involved with a wonderful pull down from the air, and then a cross for the second goal. So Jack Harrison made a very good contribution.
And also, just a word about Dwight McNeil as well, Steve. 4 goals from McNeil so far this season in all competitions. And it seems that the move into the number 10 position behind the striker is paying dividends. And as Sean Dyche said himself, Iliman Ndiaye, who has been terrific for Everton so far this season, he's done well enough so far in the wide area to allow more freedom now to move Dwight.
Yeah, he has. And Dwight McNeil, he's only got 1 foot, a left foot, but what a foot it is. And I have to remember back to the days of Kevin Sheedy. He only had a left foot as well, but what a player he was.
Yeah.
So he's fitted in very nicely, scored 2 great goals, and he's contributing a lot to the team. Ndiaye is a class act. It's a pleasure to watch him play. I felt sorry for him at half-time in the first half because he shone out of all of the players from the first half. But, fortunately, he was on the winning side in the end.
And we should mention, just going back to Dwight McNeil as well, we know last season was very difficult, wasn't it, for Dwight, given the health issues of his partner and everything. So it's really good to see him back, and also good to see that he is making an impact on the games in which he plays a part.
Yeah, he wears his heart on his sleeve, for sure, and you can see the joy and the disappointment when things go for and against him. He's not the quickest player. He runs at players, but he's not the quickest player. But he does have a very good left foot, and uses that to good effect very often for not just goals but also assists. I believe he's got more assists than pretty well everybody else in the Premier League this season, which is astonishing.
It is indeed. And we should also as well just mention, while we're talking about the speculation about the future of Jared Branthwaite, that continues to make headlines, of course. But whilst all that speculation goes on about Jared Branthwaite, it was good to see him back, wasn't it, last Saturday?
Oh, it was so good. He was a little bit ring-rusty in the first half, as they all were, and they were not collectively playing well together. But he adds such a coolness at the back. When you see someone up against him, you think Jared's going to win that, and 9 times out of 10, he's calm, collected. On the left-hand side, his presence really helps Mikolenko or whoever's playing in the left-back position. And I, like every other Evertonian, are waiting with bated breath for the next 4 minutes to see the team sheet, to see whether he's in or out for this week. Because, as I'm sure you know, Paul, after Sean Dyche's presser on Thursday lunchtime, rumours started to emerge that Branthwaite was a pick injury. So, let's hope that, I'm sure the medical guys will be all over it, and if he's fit to play, he will, and if he's not fit to play, he'll be rested for another day. But the team is a much better team with him in it.
Yeah, I think you look at the likes of Tarkowski, Makalenko and Ashley Young. They all had their best performances of the season last Saturday with Branthwaite back in the team. So Newcastle come to Goodison at 5:30 today. We know this is going to be tough. Newcastle, they've got enough talent in their squad to cause problems for any team in the Premier League. In relation to the opposition, Newcastle, Sean Dyche said in his pre-match press conference that they are a good outfit. They've invested well and they're well coached by Eddie Howe. They can play. They often get the ball forward quickly, so you've got to be alive to that because they have got pace on the counter. I mean, clearly, this is going to be a really tough test for Everton later today.
Oh, it really will be. And I think back to the last couple of games against Newcastle at Goodison. The first one being the 4-1 home defeat, which actually was the genesis of our book, the unofficial Everton timeline, because it was after that defeat on the drive home. I thought I've got to write something down here and put my thoughts down on paper. But last season, of course, it was a complete turnaround, and we won 3-0 with one of the best, I think, 24 passing moves before Beto scored the third goal. So, we've been up and we've been down. Let's hope we're up for it today. Newcastle are a very good side. They've obviously done well under Eddie Howe. I'm amused by a lot of the banter on social media about which is the bigger club. But I just had a look earlier, and Newcastle won the league was before Dixie Dean had scored his 60-goal record-breaking season.
Blimey, we are going back there somewhat, Steve. But
we certainly are. 1927, and of course he scored his 60 goals in 27-28. So I've got some friends and relatives who are from that part of the world as well, and they're long suffering, like we all are.
Well, this is it, absolutely. But it's a good start. And you mentioned the book, the unofficial Everton timeline, 2014 to 2023, the Mashiri years. I take it sales of the book still going well, and listeners can still get a copy if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's available on Amazon, currently in paperback and ebook form. But Lyndon and I, my co-author, have been working on a couple of new projects. One is an updated second edition of the book, which we plan to launch within days of hopefully the successful completion of the Friedkin takeover. So that will be saying goodbye finally to Farhad Mashiri and welcoming Dan Friedkin and his colleagues to the club. And simultaneously with launching that, there will also be an audiobook version as well. So for all of those people who prefer to listen to things while they're travelling and moving around rather than sitting down and reading the copy, the audiobook will be available at the same time.
Lovely. Listen, it's always good to talk to you, Steve. Always a pleasure to chew the fat on a Saturday afternoon. We'll get the team news in the next few minutes, and then we'll see how Everton progress against Newcastle at 5:30. Good to talk to you, and hopefully we'll get you back into the studio. I know you've got COVID at the minute, which is why you can't be with us in the studio today. So get well soon, Steve, and hopefully we'll see you in the flesh in the next few weeks.
Thanks, Paul. See you soon, and up the toffees.
Absolutely. There you go. That's Steve Dickinson talking to us there on Liverpool Live Sport.